All right, welcome back. This is another Saturday Night Gaming Heavenscape production. I will be your GM, Tony Stevens. Thank you for coming back. And today I'm going to do you the privilege of presenting you our very first Previously On. Previously on Valos, there was the creation. Shadows of chaos and despair drenched the realm. Valos, like all newborn realms, was infected by the scourge of the Olkai. These dark entities were older than time itself. They sought to return to the black, to destroy the realms and return all existence to the quiet before the birth of the source. Rallied under the banner of T'Chillik, dark god of madness and the deeps, they poisoned this new realm. They were a cancer, an unchallenged blight upon creation. Nothing would stay their chaos until the coming of the light. To face this threat, Lord Valos, defender of the realm, came down like crashing thunder. He and his fellow Dani came to this virgin realm to purify it of darkness. Lady Aloria, mother of heroes, and Lady Triss, spirit of the tides, stood with their husband in defense of this new kingdom. Garen the farmer, the peaceful god of the Dani, knew that the land must be cleansed before it could bear fruit. Even Yakil, the Chaos Bringer, was the most ferocious of the siblings and fought with the full strength and cunning of a dozen gods. Together these mighty Dani waged war with the Olkai of T'Chillik. When all seemed lost, Lord Valos made the ultimate sacrifice. He gave his life to destroy the celestial stone within the realm. The world storm was unleashed, and T'Chillik's forces were driven from the realms of men. The aftermath of this was unfettered creation. This is how Valos, as a realm, came to be. 6 centuries passed. Mortal men flourished and began to call themselves Alorian. The continent of Valos was divided by both geography and culture. The western half of the continent was covered with a vast, dense forest called the Wild, and was home to a tribe called the Huntsmen, masters of tracking and keepers of the old ways. The eastern half of Valos, Blackbrook Keep sat as the capital of power, and the home of the Seaborn, mighty warriors of the sea and raiders. Deep in the forests of the Wild, Chief Alsta Greenleaf ruled the huntsmen with strength and honor. His people called him the Feralborn, and they chose him both for his strength and for his respect of the old ways of the wild hunt. It fell upon him to provide sacrifices for the mystic beast of the land, Fengar of the wild hunt. No lambs nor children would suffice for this great wolf. Only the strongest of warriors would stay the beast's hunger and provide the blessing of the wild. Howgate Ragnolf was the tribe's best hunter. He was chosen as a sacrifice to Fengar and was sent to the source tree to lay down his life before the great wolf. With bravery, he entered the cave of the Shadowfang, deep within the roots of the massive source tree. After 9 days, Ragnolf emerged, the first mortal to ever return from the cave. A massive scar stretched across his shoulder and over his chest. The great wolf Fengar had spared his life, renaming him Einar Ragnolf of the Wild Scar, and gifting him with visions of a great black dragon coming to destroy the realms. Determined to prevent this calamity, Einar traveled for days through the dense wild toward the civil lands of the Seaborn. At last he came to a mead hall on the forest's edge. Music and a distant raucous laughter drifted over the harvested fields and well-traveled roads. A welcome change to the dangers of the wild. Einar Ragnolf ordered a horn of ale and waited for the next sign from destiny. The wayward dog, with its mead and fellowship, attracted all manner of Alorian, from toil-weary farmers to battle-hardened warriors. And Thulgrim Bloodwind, champion of Valcoria, sat nearby, seeking to stifle the boredom of endless gladiatorial fights with a new adventure. Einar couldn't help but admire the gladiator's mighty axe and even mightier beard. John the Red, an amnesiac with a fondness for blood and warfare, admired their magnificent beards and joined them for drinks. Sol, child of fire, a socially awkward monk of Mount Amok, was drawn into their drunken company, wishing he too had a beard. Ulthar the Cursed served them drinks and judged their character. Even the young daughter of the local blacksmith, Rhea Ravenwood, snuck in to hear the warriors' tales of adventure. An unlikely fellowship had been formed over ale and beards and axes. The small tavern suddenly roared with excitement as Captain Jack Carrick entered. He was known to all as the Serpent's Fang, and the group was drawn in to talk to him. He challenged them to compete in a series of trials, which would be held the following day. The winners would become seaborne and would join Captain Carrick's crew. During the night, the group was attacked by a small force of huntsman trackers. They were sent to complete the sacrifice intended for Fengar by bringing back Einar's head. The newly acquainted adventurers fought together, and the combined might of Thulgrim and Sol drove the huntsmen back into the woods. The group was now united by combat, as well as destiny. The dawn came, and they went to Blackbrook Keep to compete in the Seaborn trials. Governor Toth-Rin Blackbrook was nothing like the Pharaoh-born chief of the huntsmen. Blackbrook was grim and tough, with hair as black as the deepest reaches of the East Sea, and a salt-weathered scowl. He had earned the respect of his people from a lifetime of... Many just called him Blackbrook, the father of the modern age. Let's say that. And some even whispered that he was prophesied to unite the realm of men. The unlikely adventurers competed in the Seaborn trials, and Blackbrook himself judged them worthy. Impressed with their valor and cunning, Captain Carrick named them Riders of the Storm, and the very next morn they set sail into the uncharted East Sea. The Riders of the Storm survived their long voyage at sea and overcame many life-threatening monsters. At long last, they discovered new land, granting a reprieve from the salted air of the sea. Ulthar alone recognized the land as Telucia, and warned them all of their terrors that existed in this new place. But his words fell upon deaf ears, as the riders were eager to stretch their legs, to say the least. The captain took a raiding party north as Einar and his fellow riders traveled further east towards the towering lighthouse in the distance. Inside the abandoned tower, Einar the huntsman was drawn to an owl-like night Strigid, watching them from the shadows. Through the old ways of the wild hunt and gifts of Fengar, he communes with her and learns that her name is Vevasir, and that the lighthouse is known as Grim's Beacon. Making their way through the massive tower, Thulgrim and Sol even fought and defeated a mighty automaton, and the party found many enchanted treasures. One of the most powerful items was the Helm of Allsight. This mighty helmet granted intelligence to its wearer, but at a price. It burdened Thulgrim with visions of monstrosities, plaguing a mountain a few miles to the east. Sol found himself drawn to an ancient forge in the bowels of the tower, and with the help of his guardian beast, Amok of the undying flame, Sol managed to ignite the infernal forge. Rhea Ravenwood reforged the god metal of Thulgrim's battle axe into a mighty blade, and Sol imbued the blade with fire from the realm of Amok himself. Despite Ulthar's constant warnings, the Riders of the Storm decided to follow Thulgrim's vision toward the mountains. Upon leaving the lighthouse, the group was met by a large, jovial man singing songs along the road. He introduced himself as Hagar the Bard and challenged Thulgrim to a duel. After defeating them all single-handedly, Hagar revealed himself as Grim the Watcher. He blessed the items they took from his tower and entrusted Vevasir to Einar's care. He sent the group on their way, some more forcefully than others. Driven by Thulgrim's vision, the Riders of the Storm fought their way up the mountain, plagued by the undead wraiths of Chillik, Ulthar's former brethren. They learned that nearly 500 years ago, Ulthar belonged to a cult bent on summoning the mad god T'Chillik back to the realm of men. They succeeded in opening the doorway into the void, and as they stared into the abyss, Ulthar had a change of heart. He banished the dark god, but was cursed with immortal deformity. His brethren's lives were claimed that day, but their undead bodies continued to serve the Lord of Chaos. The riders fought and subdued the wraiths, and made their way to the temple of T'Chillik. Once they arrived, they were met by Captain Carrick, who had searched far and wide for them. An unnatural force took hold of them, and they were lost to a portal just inside the temple's doors. The Storm Riders drifted deeper and deeper into the void. Time had no meaning here. Mad laughter and disheartening whispers filled their ears. Their very souls grew cold as they struggled to maintain sanity. The mysterious John the Red managed to save them all, as he summoned forth a magical ship from his even more magical cloak. They all boarded the Red Herring, and Jack Carrick guided them with his own mystical relic, the Chaos Compass. They landed upon the tainted soils of the void and met with the strangest of allies, a dark man named Larza. He led them to the Keep of Madness, the home of the Mad God. There they faced the armies of T'Chillik. The horde of Olkai was led by a dark titan, Balkmire, who shared the same name and power of this void realm. The Storm Riders fought through their despair and gained ground. It was then that John the Red revealed the true and terrible power he held as he opened a void portal within the chest of the giant. All were drawn into its power. The Olkai and the Riders of the Storm were all cast through the swirling portal and flung into an unknown realm. Upon arrival in this strange land, they were met by a military force and learned that this place was called Exordia. But the Riders of the Storm did not come through the portal alone. The disembodied Olkai of T'Chillik poured from the void and ravaged the nearby town of Amondeep, possessing the soldiers and citizens alike. The trickster, Larza, poisoned the minds of Thulgrim, John the Red, and Rhea Ravenwood. In the ensuing battle, Sol made a last-ditch effort to defeat the demonic entities. However, he was untrained in the magic of this new realm and summoned the full power and uncontrollable fury of Amok. He used the remainder of his strength to protect his friends, and they all watched in horror as Amondeep was razed to the ground. Einar and his winged companion Vavasir searched frantically through the ash and debris, and the Riders of the Storm found him holding the scorched remains of Rhea as he wept. It was at that moment another group of travelers arrived from the void. These people were no strangers to this land. However, one among them sought vengeance for Sol's actions. His name was Cirrus Dyad, and he was a force to be feared. His fury left Sol nearly lifeless. If not for the actions of Captain Jack Carrick that day, Sol would have returned to the Source Father. The Riders of the Storm were exhausted and spent, but Larza had more mischief in mind. He twisted the mind of a monstrous winged creature named Shugga. And just as the truce was declared, Shugga attacked them all. Commanding shadow powers of an unknown magnitude, the creature proved a challenge for everyone present. Again, Captain Carrick resolved himself to save his battle-weary crew and launched himself at Shugga with a roar. Wielding his compass as a talisman, he marked the massive bat-like creature with the mark of chaos, claiming the beast's servitude and submission. He summoned the last of the amulet's energy and reserve and opened a portal through the void, home to Valos. Einar, John the Red, Thulgrim, Sol, and even Ulthar, awoke with the familiar realm of Valos. Captain Carrick is nowhere to be seen, and something else is wrong as well. They were in the right place, but at the wrong time. They were home, but displaced by hundreds of years. The Storm Riders would have to find a way to survive the future of their realm while struggling to find a way back to their rightful era. Stuck in this strange future, the Riders of the Storm befriended Dr. Raphael Grigori, a renowned scientist also known as the Watcher. Hoping to find a way home, the group met with Artavian, the Lord of Greater Eloria, and agreed to track down and recover the 8 source shards that once made the Celestial Stone. As they started on their quest, they were shocked at how much Valos had changed since they first set out on their adventure all those hundreds of years ago. The first place they ventured on their quest for the shards, Einar's fresh grief over the loss of Rhea was compounded when they reached a small, twisted forest, all that remained of the vast, dense wild of his people. Einar's scar burned, and his connection to Fangar drew them to a cave, where they discovered the remains of Fangar of the Wild Hunt, the wolf guardian of life and of the wild. Raphael the Watcher recognized the cave and told the Storm Riders of his battle with the ancient and corrupted Wild Witch. This cavern was the very spot where he had left her for dead. At this moment, the Riders of the Storm were confronted by a man in the darkness of the cave. He held a large, flaming claymore and said nothing. Thulgrim stepped forward and drew his blade. The massive sword, formed in the infernal forge by Sol and Rhea, seemed to glimmer in the darkness of the cave. Thulgrim rushed to meet his opponent head-on. The blade grew heavy and hot. As he raised it up to strike his enemy, it flamed to life in his hand, identical to the flaming claymore of the enemy. The 2 blades clashed, and the cave was filled with the shriek of twisting metal. The flames of Amok roared into a blinding, white-hot light, and the very air drummed as time-displaced swords merged to become whole once more. When the light and sounds faded, Commander Arthur Jonas Strathmore stood in the darkness, the red-hot Iratus blade in his hand illuminating his hardened features. The stench of the forge filled the cave, and no one spoke. Then, with a roar, Thulgrim charged yet again. Strathmore defeated the Storm Riders one by one with the power of all the shards he had already collected, for he too was on a quest to collect the stones. While his companions recovered from their wounds, Sol implored the elderly warrior to take him on his quest to save the realm. Strathmore agreed, and the 2 vanished as Thulgrim cursed his traitorous ally. Strathmore and Sol made camp at the top of a familiar place, Mount Amok. The grizzled warrior told the young monk of his many quests through the realms that exist beyond the void. He enlightened him about his quest to collect the shards and prevent the coming terror that he had seen in his nightmares. A beast with power beyond all imagining was coming to Valos. The dark star was rising. As they slept, a shadowed entity grew from the black shard embedded within Strathmore's blade, splitting the mighty claymore in 2. The foul man named Xavier, who had been imprisoned within the magical stone, was released to walk the mortal planes once more. He stole the shards that Strathmore had collected. Sol woke to the curses of his companion. The broken pieces of the Iratus blade lay scattered on the ground, and in that moment, Sol felt the fear of what those powerful artifacts could do in the wrong hands. Strathmore devised a plan to track down the blue shard that controlled the essence of time itself. With that, they could go back and retrieve all the other shards. Meanwhile, Thulgrim and the Storm Riders were in pursuit of their former ally and Strathmore. They confronted them on the shores of the Emerald Isle with much violence. Finally, Sol was able to reason with his friends and begged them to listen to what Strathmore had to say. Their quests were one and the same. Destiny had led them to this moment. United, they finally marched to the Temple of Orin. In confusion, the party assaulted a large creature that protected that temple. John the Red slaughtered the beast and collected its head. A voice boomed from within the temple, and the warriors were summoned to enter. Once inside, they stood face to face with Orin, the All-Knowing, keeper of the Blue Shard, a large mythic turtle that warned them against the follies of temporal upheaval. He agreed to return them to their own time if they would never again desecrate his temple with their presence. However, with a sleight of hand and the mystical properties of his cloak, John the Red managed to steal the Blue Shard just as they were enveloped by a temporal portal. The Storm Riders and Strathmore journeyed through time. They stumbled through Arthur's own timeline trying to make their way back to the Seaborn era. They watch as the Iratus blade is fought over in the remains of Riverside when they stumble back further. They witness Strathmore and his allies battle and defeat a maniacal warrior known as Mud. In this moment, they witness the full power of the Iratus blade as it opens a gateway into the very realm of Amok, of the Undying Flame. Sol uses this opportunity to steal the essence of a flame elemental, trapping the vengeful soul inside his dagger just before the group is jaunted further back. They find themselves upon a mechanical wonder known as the Solaris Sky Station, and watch as Arthur Strathmore first wields the Iratus blade in his battle against the evil Dr. Thaddeus Miles Stein. However, the Sky Station was reliant upon the living power within the blade, and once removed, it set in motion the devastating destruction of the great Sky Station. The Storm Riders gathered together as John attempts to use the temporal powers of the Shard. With no moment to spare, he manages to take them away from this place just as it is blown to pieces. Finally, the Storm Riders recognized their surroundings. They were back where they had started, at the Temple of T'Challak, their minds still reeling from a whirlwind of temporal displacement. They realized the mad god was emerging from the portal within the temple. Their own adventure through time and space had allowed the fabric of the realm to weaken and the dark god to rise. Strathmore calculated the best plan he could devise and left the battlefield with John the Red and Sol. The three of them went back to Grimm's Beacon while Einar, Ulthar, and Thulgrim attempted to distract the forces of the enemy. Sol ignited the infernal forge beneath the beacon as John the Red cast a field of enchanted time. Sol was able to work as long as he needed to create mighty weapons while mere seconds passed outside the barrier. Arthur gave Sol the fragments of the mighty Iratus blade and begged him to restore it. Sol could see that even though the red shard had been stolen, the essence of the sword still glowed within, a single ember against the darkness. Using the soul of the flame elemental from his dagger, he enhanced the sword's essence. Sol granted the old warrior his request and reforged the mighty blade. The world outside the temporal barrier was crumbling. Just as all seemed lost, a portal opened and Captain Jack Carrick arrived to defend his crew. Together with Thulgrim, he was defeated and thrown into the East Sea. In order to save the captain, Thulgrim shed all of his special armors and weapons. He was able to swim them to shore. He watched in amazement as Carrick's appearance changed before his very eyes. The captain stood before him now as Yakil Dani, the Chaos Bringer. His chaos compass was lost to the sea, and without its magic, he could no longer hide behind the visage of the captain. Yakil revealed that he was indeed Thulgrim's father, and that he would do anything to try and save him. Anything but stay. Without another word, Yakil rushed back into the sea to find his missing compass, leaving Thulgrim dumbstruck on the shore. Within the temporal barrier of the infernal forge, The Iratus blade was finally completed, along with a mighty axe for Einar and many other powerful weapons. Strathmore, Saul, and John the Red returned to the fray. Saul donned the armor of Alden and set loose his foxfire fist. In a single blow, he was able to destroy one of the eyes of T'Chillak. The mad god reeled in pain, and as all the warriors joined together to attack him, started to crumble. Ulthar worked his way into the giant's chest and began to devour its heart, as Einar steadily swung his new axe at the monstrosity's neck. Strathmore tossed his reforged Iratus blade to Thulgrim and watched as the mighty demigod drove it into the beast's skull. Thulgrim grinned and then tossed the blade back to Arthur. T'Chillak was defeated. The Storm Riders did not have time to celebrate, though. The mad god's body began to collapse inward, pulling the very fabric of reality in. The ruins of the temple, the wraiths of T'Chillak, even the very ground itself was being pulled into the chasm. In a haze of confusion, the riders of the storm managed to escape, being drawn again into the endless void. As the last remnants of T'Chillak fade from this world, Arthur Strathmore was nowhere to be found. Thulgrim searched for as long as he could, finally accepting the old warrior's fate. He and his mighty blade were lost to the void. Just then, a tremendous explosion ripped forth from the East Sea. The Storm Riders stood in awe and terror as Einar's visions had come to pass, and the nightmare became a reality. A monstrous form rose from the waves. A demonic voice echoed through the air. The ground began to tremble as it said, "I am Drak, the Archon Darkstar, the black dragon of the East Sea. I have come to plague your lands and to defile your minds." Now, Valos is entering the Warbound era, and will be filled with many new threats. All who return to this world of magic and high fantasy must be prepared for what they may face. Victory is uncertain, and death is assured. Will the adventures of Sol, Thulgrim, Einar, Ulthar, and John the Red end in tragedy? Will new adventurers join their quest to save Valos? We will have to wait and see. But until then, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your grandmother. She loves Strathmore, and he loves her too. Until next time, this is Tony Stevens signing off.